to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Per a post from International Boxing News' Instagram page, WBC interim for Sky Nicholson next. Sky Nicholson is rumored to challenge WBC interim featherweight champion
Sabrina Perez
of Argentina, with one misconception. I don't know that Sabrina Perez is the WBC interim champion at featherweight. What I do know is that earlier this year she was in action at super bantamweight, one division south of featherweight, and she won the interim title there. WBC interim title. Nevertheless, Nicholson versus Perez was targeted before Sky Nicholson's fight against Linda Leka back in April. A win would make Sky mandatory to Amanda Serrano, this division's undisputed champion, and even with a win over Perez, I don't think Sky Nicholson's ready for Amanda Serrano. I just don't.
sporting a professional record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, and no recorded knockouts, none yet.
I imagine that the fight between Sky and Sabrina Perez would look a lot like the fight Sky just had with Linda Leka. You're talking about a shorter, stumpier fighter, slower with slower feet.
Not as athletic as Sky, not as long and limber.
Fight with Sabrina Perez would likely be a carbon copy of the fight with Linda Leka. Sabrina Perez, an experienced fighter, very experienced, more experienced than Sky, with more rounds in the bank. Not dissimilar from what we saw in the Linda Leka fight. Linda Leka had more rounds in the bank than Sky.
Same deal.
Sporting a professional record of 18 wins with 1 loss and 1 draw.
2 knockouts.
Having been knocked out once, just once in 20 professional contests, 20 professional bouts.
Standing in at a very portly 5'2", campaigning anywhere in between 122 pounds and 126, 126, where this contest would take place.
Shorter, stumpier fighter than Sky Nicholson, standing in at 5'2". Sky's standing in at about, 5'5", 5'6". Those long levers and long legs, long strides.
Remember that Sky Nicholson is an outside fighter, an outside jabber, thus having a height advantage and a reach advantage over her opponents allows her to fight the kind of fight that she wants to fight.
An outside fight, an outside safety-first fight fought from a safe distance to where she can take a half step back and be well out of range of her opponent's punches.
I don't actually have an issue with the matchmaking we've been seeing in Sky Nicholson's fights.
Linda Leka, Sabrina Perez, these are experienced fighters, solid fighters, and I don't have an issue with Sky sharing the ring with any of them. If she does fight Sabrina,
it's all right. Remember, Sky Nicholson only has 7 fights, so do you expect her to fight?
This is not a bad opponent option, if I do say so myself. Sabrina Perez, who only has 1 lone defeat to Marianela Ramirez. Way back there in 2018, she was stopped in the first round. She has rebounded off that loss since then in February of 2020.
She took off all of 2019, returned to action in February of 2020, subsequently took off all of 2021, returning to action in March of 2022. She hasn't fought since then. In that way, it's been over a year's time since Sabrina saw action, so you can more or less see what the angling is. They're still mitigating the risks for Sky Nicholson, but that's customary this early in a fighter's career.
And learning from their mistakes. Very recently, they put young Ramla Ali in there with the very experienced and hard-punching Alejandra Guzman, and we saw how that ended.
And I don't think they want to see Sky end up like that.
The truth is that Sky Nicholson has a respectable resume so far, a respectable record in spite of not being the most fan-friendly fighter. Pure boxers are often subject to a lot of criticism because they don't let the fists fly. They're safety-first, economic, outside fighters for the most part, just like Sky.
But her resume isn't bad. This isn't a bad opponent option.
It's very obvious that they are still mitigating the risks and using a bit of angling whenever they match Sky against someone, but that's what you're supposed to do this early in a fighter's career, to allow them to develop in a controlled environment, mitigating the risks. I will say that a win over Sabrina does not mean that Sky is ready for Amanda. In truth, I don't know that Sky is ever going to be ready for Amanda.
Sky Nicholson's a pure boxer, and Amanda Serrano is a boxer-puncher, rather a cross between a boxer-puncher and a pressure fighter. She's got the boxer-puncher's fundamentals
with the pressure fighter's spite, volume, and power. Amanda Serrano throws punches in bunches, and as we all know, you don't want to let her hit you clean.
Sky's best weapon in a fight like that would have to be her movement, her feet.
But all that's going to do is buy her time. Not dissimilar from what we saw in the Sarah Mahfoud fight. Sarah Mahfoud, whose movement allowed her to hear the final bell, but she was grossly outworked by Amanda Serrano. Coming forward, stepping into her jab, Sarah didn't mount anything in terms of offense.
She was only fighting half of a fight, just trying to survive. I think that if Sky Nicholson actually shared the ring with Amanda anywhere inside of the next 2 to 3 fights, that's what their fight would look like.
Sky doesn't have the power or the volume to keep Amanda Serrano off of her.
So even if she does beat Sabrina Perez, that in no way, shape, or form means she's ready for Amanda.
Amanda Serrano's got a great engine, and her volume punching can wear down and wear out a greenhorn like a Sky Nicholson.
She is green.
So far, she's only fought in 2 10-rounders.
She is green.
I understand that Sky Nicholson is a young and fresh fighter with good height, good length, and good speed. She's lacking power, lacking offense.
How are you going to keep Amanda Serrano out if you can't get her respect?
Lateral movement and pivots while hooking on the turn, that's only going to get you so far.
There's no shame in a fighter with only 7 pro fights not being ready for Amanda. The problem is that Sky kind of put that burden on herself by calling her out.
Needs to just focus on the woman in front of her. If she's fighting Sabrina, then focus on Sabrina, continue to tighten things up and develop, and don't worry about Amanda Serrano.
It's going to be a long time before she's ready for a fight like that.
Men's welterweight news. Battle of the former champions Keith Thurman versus Yordenis Ugas interim title fight in play for mid to late August.
It's been well over a year's time since either of the former champions saw action. It's only right that they stage a fight between each other.
The winner will be among those who will wait in line for a shot at the undisputed welterweight championship or an upgrade to full title status. Errol Spence and Terence Crawford will meet for all 4 major titles atop a July 29th Showtime pay-per-view event from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The summit meeting between the top 2 welterweights in the world carries a bilateral rematch clause that could further delay anyone else in the division getting a crack at the top prize. Ugas was previously rumored to face San Antonio's Mario Barrios in an interim WBC title fight, and I gotta tell you, they've gotta stop putting guys in there with Barrios and thinking somebody's gonna give a damn.
Or that it's going to fool anybody.
Mario Barrios didn't beat anyone of note, anyone of any significance at 140 pounds,
Nope.
and he didn't do it at 147. His claim to fame is being knocked out by Gervonta Davis and outpointed by Keith Thurman.
If not for that, we wouldn't even know who the man is.
Thankfully, we look to be getting Ugas versus Thurman instead of Ugas versus Barrios.
Nobody wants to see that.
Thankfully, a more sensible option has prevailed, given Thurman's win over Mario Barrios in their welterweight meeting last February 5th in Las Vegas. Thurman hasn't fought since then, as he's watched several discussed dates and options fall by the wayside. The most lucrative opportunity, once linked to the former WBA/WBC welterweight champion, was his own shot at Spence atop a Showtime pay-per-view that was eyed for this past February and again this spring.
We know that Errol didn't want to willfully give Keith Thurman the time of day in spite of the WBC's order. Lest we forget, this fight was ordered by the WBC.
Thurman versus Spence, though the WBC not really being sticklers for the rules, even their own rules, they allowed Errol to instead take on Terence Crawford in the long-awaited, long-anticipated, undisputed title fight set to go down later on this month, but that has left Keith Thurman without a dance partner.
For several months until now.
This fight materializes, I don't know how the people at the PBC and Showtime plan on billing it.
What?
A Thurman versus Ugas fight is a decent enough fight that I think it could draw good viewership on regular Showtime, but if it's their plan to bill this as a pay-per-view,
Forget it.
forget it. I'm not paying $75 to see 2 faded former champions.
Forget it.
Neither one of these 2 guys has fought in over a year's time, and that way, neither of their careers has any excitement or momentum at this time, and you think I should have to pay $75 to see these 2 guys?
You're crazy.
As we speak, Matchroom is in the process of making a fight between 2 unbeaten champions in Sonny Edwards and Bam Rodriguez, 2 unbeaten champions in their prime.
In a unification match that isn't a pay-per-view.
So why the hell should I give you $75 to see these 2 schmucks? I'm curious as to how Showtime plans on billing this fight, because Ugas has also not fought.
He's been out for over a year.
The curious case of Yordenis Ugas, recipient of several participation awards. I think his claim to fame is taking on a 41-year-old Manny Pacquiao that hadn't fought in 2 years.
He's a solid fighter, don't get me wrong.
But even at his best, he's not a fighter that I'd pick to beat a Radzov Butaev or an Amantis Stanionis,
No.
a Virgil Ortiz or a Jaron Boots Ennis.
No.
He had a solid showing against Sean Porter some years ago. Made it a competitive fight. Good fight, but he didn't win the fight.
Fast forward, Manny sits on the shelf for too long and is labeled a champion in recess by the WBA. Ugas is elevated to full champion status, fights Manny, beats Manny.
Manny Pacquiao, who is something like 41 years old, 2 years removed from the sport, 2 years inactive at that age. Needless to say, I don't give Ugas a whole lot of credit for the version of Manny Pacquiao that he fought. He subsequently climbs into the ring with Errol Spence Jr.
He loses.
Doesn't even try against Errol Spence Jr. And I have my reservations about Ugas and how he performed in that fight, why he performed that way. Nevertheless, that was over a year ago. Over a year later, you shouldn't have to pay pay-per-view prices to see a fighter like this fight.
What Thurman?
Two guys that sit out for well over a year in a non-title fight, that should cost you $75. I don't think so.
The winner of the fight, whoever it is, comes one step closer to challenging the winner of Crawford versus Spence, or one step closer to being elevated to full champion.
We'll find out which is which. I think Keith Thurman, would go into this Ugas fight as the favorite.
It's an intriguing fight, don't get me wrong. It's just not a fight you should have to pay an arm and a leg to see.
Two inactive former champions in a non-title fight? No, this belongs on regular Showtime as part of their regular schedule. And if it is, I think they could do good metrics, good TV ratings with this fight.
Thurman goes in as the favorite, I think.
He's got the more solid resume of the two. Keith Thurman's lone defeat came at the hands of Manny Pacquiao in 2019, but that's his only career blemish.
That's it.
That one loss. Ugas is coming off a year of inactivity just like Keith and a fractured orbital bone.
He ain't got no eyebrows.
Keith Thurman ain't got no hairline. Under these circumstances, these are two evenly matched former champions, and let's see if this fight don't materialize. And finally, in men's lightweight news, former unified champion George Kambosos says Devin Haney is the best at 135 pounds, not Gervonta Davis.
That's gonna ruffle some feathers.
After going toe-to-toe with Devin Haney for 24 rounds and suffering 2 unanimous decision losses, George Kambosos Jr. is convinced that his conqueror is the best lightweight in the world. Devin Haney has the belts, he's proven, he's got everything. Yeah, Tank has beaten some good guys, but he hasn't beaten the guys that Haney has beaten. We've seen a rehydration clause on Tank's biggest win against Ryan Garcia, so those kinds of things stain a resume from the outside looking in. Haney is the #1 lightweight at this stage until he vacates, Kambosos told BoxingScene.com in an interview.
George Kambosos raises some valid points when you think about Devin Haney's lightweight resume compared to Gervonta's. Who did Gervonta Davis beat at lightweight that was really solid, that was really a solid fighter?
Gamboa was a journeyman, Isaac was a nobody, Rolly is a retard. I want you to think about this for a second. The same guys that claim to love Gervonta Davis and all things PBC, they don't give Terrence Crawford credit for beating an unbeaten Yuriorkis Gamboa in his prime. They don't give him credit for that.
They say he hasn't fought anyone.
Hasn't beat anyone. They don't give him credit for beating Gamboa, unbeaten Gamboa, years ago. They don't give him credit for that, but I'm supposed to give Gervonta credit for this?
How the fuck does that work?
You think about Gervonta Davis's lightweight resume compared to Devin Haney's. Devin Haney, who is coming off a spirited unanimous decision win against Vasyl Lomachenko, in addition to his pair of wins against George Kambosos. Haney has also beaten Joseph Diaz and Jorge Linares, Gamboa as well.
Gamboa is a common opponent between Devin and Gervonta.
But he's hardly the highlight of Devin Haney's lightweight resume. Unbeaten unified George Kambosos 2 times, Vasyl Lomachenko, who initially was Gervonta Davis's adversary.
Yeah.
His homework.
For how many years did we see Gervonta Davis beat around the bush, circling away from a Lomachenko fight, while campaigning at the same weights as him at 130, at 135?
He never got around to fighting him. He never got around to doing it. Devin Haney did. Controversial outcome that it might have been.
Devin fought him.
Gervonta didn't. That's another name on Devin Haney's resume. that you won't find on Gervonta Davis's resume.
I think the win over George Kambosos is a better win than any win you'll find on Gervonta Davis's resume, because George was an unbeaten champion, and not just an unbeaten champion, an unbeaten, unified Ring Magazine and lineal champion. He was dominated by Devin both times.
What win on Gervonta Davis's lightweight resume compares to that one? Hell, what win on his resume overall?
Gamboa wasn't a champion. Neither was Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero.
Hector Luis Garcia. He didn't win a belt from Hector Luis Garcia. Hector was a super featherweight champion, not a lightweight champion. And Ryan, I don't even know that you can count Ryan towards Gervonta Davis's lightweight resume when it was fought above the lightweight limit.
136.
The fight was fought at a catch weight of 136 pounds. Most of Gervonta Davis's fans don't seem to understand how weight classes work. Anything above 135,
But below 140.
that's super lightweight, otherwise known as junior welter.
He fought Ryan Garcia at junior welterweight, 136. Even if it's just a pound above lightweight, that's still junior welter.
Not that Ryan Garcia beat anybody at lightweight or super lightweight, because he didn't.
What victory does Ryan Garcia have that compares to the George Kambosos wins or the Vasyl Lomachenko win?
I'll tell you the truth, that at lightweight, Gervonta Davis hasn't fought anybody, and the people that he's fought, they haven't fought anybody either.
Think about it.
What Gervonta Davis's fans resort to doing in this situation is pontificating and postulating, hypothesizing what Gervonta Davis might do to this guy and that guy, because he hasn't actually done it.
He hasn't actually fought these people. He hasn't fought George, and he hasn't fought Loma. Hasn't fought Devin.
The people that he's fought, they haven't fought anybody either.
The question is, who is the number one lightweight in the world right now, just based on merit?
On merit alone, it's Devin Haney. It's not even a question. He is that division's undisputed Ring Magazine and lineal champion, not Gervonta Davis.
I think they confuse his popularity with his actual ability and his actual resume.
Oh yeah, maybe he's a lot more popular than Devin Haney, but that doesn't make him more accomplished, and that doesn't make him the number one lightweight in the world. There's no argument to substantiate him being the number one lightweight in the world, not until he challenges Devin and beats him.
Gervonta has never held a full lightweight title, a full-fledged title in the men's lightweight division. All he's got is a WBA Reggie belt that he's had since 2019.
That's it. He's never been a bona fide champion at this weight, so until he fights Devin and beats him, or until Devin leaves the division.
Till he abdicates the lightweight throne, he is number one.
And don't start up with your fucking fight predictions. Don't start up with your fucking fight forecast, because your forecast is no substitute for an actual fight, an actual result. I don't care who you think would win.
They have to actually win to get the credit for it.
Gervonta Davis's team have yet to make Devin Haney an offer.
So how are they supposed to fight him?
Well, it doesn't look like they're trying to.